SJ. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Stone Go, Gary 5, Jahal Jeff Ghettos, Mvskoke Radio, Mabu Edged Wedge. Welcome to our program today. It's one heck of a day as far as breaking news and that sort of thing. If you had tuned into the brew a little earlier today, you would have heard our Secretary of Health, Sean Terry, and Maine Medical Officer, Dr. Billy Beats, talking about the coronavirus and some of the latest information. We had hoped to snare them for a couple of minutes here on the show, but they got through my fingers there, so we'll be repeating some information later. There was a meeting at the tribe this morning discussing how the tribe would continue to prepare for it. But in the meantime, we've still got a couple of other things we'll be sharing. We're going to be speaking with Mr. Eric Taylor, who is Chief Dispatcher with the Mvskoke Nation Transit Department. We're going to be talking about shuttle buses and the trolley and other things that are coming up that can get you to and from work and save you a few bucks here and there, plus the headache of the traffic. Later on in the program, we're going to be speaking with a representative from the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, about some of the things they've been doing as far as Native peoples, tribal IDs, and religious artifacts. How do they get handled or not handled when you go through the airport? But first of all, let's welcome Mr. Taylor to the program. We appreciate you making time this morning to come in and talk with us.
I'm glad to be here, Gary.
Okay, we're probably all familiar with seeing the buses shuttling through town and up and down 75 and throughout Okmulgee and key places around this community. Mm-hmm. And actually, you guys have got several services that are available. So why don't we start there and kind of give us a capsule of what your department does?
Okay. We'll start off with, we offer the ride-to-work routes that travel to 3 different areas. The first one goes up north to Glenpool and the Tulsa Hills bus stop down there. That route usually starts at 6, picks up anybody here in Okmulgee needing to go to Tulsa, and we get up there to the Tulsa Hills around 6:45. Then it comes back into the Glenpool Walmart and picks up there and leaves out of there around 7:10. Then brings them on back into Okmulgee. The other routes that we have is the Eufaula Shakota route. It starts up around 5:30 and heads that way and picks up at the Eufaula Indian community down there. We usually roll out of there about 6:10. Right now we got one rider down there, and we bring them all the way back here to Okmulgee. But we also stop in at the Flying J there in Shakota. Mm-hmm. We get there around 7, pick up whoever needs from there and back into Okmulgee. The third one is the Mvskoke run. Now it runs 4 times a day. We also, along with that Mvskoke run, we offer a free veterans route that goes to the Mvskoke VA. They get on. It starts around 5:45. Starts picking up here in Okmulgee. If we got anybody scheduled to go that way, then heads around to the Mvskoke Travel Plaza and into Mvskoke. If we got somebody that we need to drop off at the VA, we'll drop them off then pick up at the Timothy Church, then bring them back into Okmulgee. A lot of veterans ride. A few veterans ride that early morning route, but most of them utilize the second and third run. The second and third run, it was mainly the veterans run that started at 8:15. And it's gotten a little bit bigger. So, but we usually try to get on the road by 8:30 and get them over there by 9. And our third run picks up over there at the Mvskoke Veterans Hospital at between 3 and 3:15. They had a little construction over there down on 16 Highway, but that's our time to get over there and bring them back in. Then our fourth run, it leaves here at 5 o'clock, picks up some complex workers here and heads back that way. Generally, if you get with the ladies at the Veterans Hospital over there, they kind of schedule the veterans within our time frame. That way we can stay on schedule and all that. But it's these ride to work routes are a pretty good deal. It saves you on wear and tear on your car, having to get into heavy traffic, and it's $15 a week to ride with us. Now the veterans going to the hospital, that's free of charge.
Right, great.
But yeah, you can't beat $15 a week.
No, you can burn that in gas.
Yeah,
just
you
sitting
burn
in
that
traffic.
in gas in one day.
Now it's I'm going to ask you to recap. Now you've got like 4 major routes that you run. One north to the Walmart in Glenpool, plus the Tulsa Hills. Is that?
Tulsa Hills bus stop.
Okay, and then one to Okima. Is that right? What was it?
It was Eufaula and Chakota.
Eufaula and Chakota,
Yeah.
right. Thank you very much. And then to Mvskoke. And there was another one? Was there another route that you run there?
It runs 4 times over to
Okay, for those 3 major routes.
Yeah, we got 3 major routes that run early in the morning and late in the evening.
Right, so if people want specifics, they can give you a buzz and get times to that pick up and drop off kind of thing.
Yeah, and we also got all those times on our website also underneath the transit department.
Well, one of the reasons why you're here today is because I had my little pickup in the shop for about a week, and used the shuttle from Glenpool down here, and I thought, my gosh, this is really handy. My nice clean equipment, friendly personnel, see some people I know sitting around having fun.
Yeah.
Or you can go to sleep,
Yeah.
which I did a couple of. And bingo, front door, right there at Mvskoke Media. I mean, it's pretty hard to beat.
Oh yeah, you can't beat that. If I lived in Tulsa, I would utilize it. I'd get on there and go to sleep and be ready to go 8 o'clock when I get here to work. Especially that way, because the Tulsa runs, it really beats all that traffic.
Oh my gosh, yes.
If you don't like dealing with traffic, we're the way to go. That way you can sit there and relax. Our drivers are professional, so they're trained, with all safety aspects. We'll get you there safe.
Yeah, they're Indians too, so they can have fun with you too.
Yeah.
And they, I noticed that there was a good rapport between the driver and passengers. They seem to know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
That kind of develops after a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I said, it's almost kind of like getting back on a school bus again. You know everybody on there, and you're on your way home.
Yeah, no bullies.
Yeah.
No bully. Now, you guys have a couple of other things that you run too. Now, you're responsible for the big bus long distance trips.
Yeah, our charter buses.
And then the Trolley, that really beautiful little machine that runs around here in Okmulgee, right?
Oh, yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about those 2 services?
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and start with the charter services. They go all over the world. They got one going. They got a big schedule this month. They're fixing to head out to Orlando, Florida. This Sunday, taking a baseball team down there. But yeah, it's Red Hicks. He gets that transportation going. Where, like I said, they're getting bigger along with us also. But
they have these. I noticed that they've gone to places like Washington D.C. with the Creek Festival up there at the Smithsonian. And you see them up and down 75 to special events, sports, whatever.
Yeah.
Meetings at like River Spirit and things like that. So you guys
just a lot little. We also do little single day, events also. But yeah, they're unlimited. They go wherever, whenever.
And I know, aren't they available during festival as a shuttle service, or is that someone else?
No, they're available. I mean, if they get a call, if somebody needs to go somewhere. But other than that, only thing during the festival that our shuttles are available. Through we run through the whole 3 day through there.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about the trolley here for a little bit. You see them making a pretty wide circuit around here in Okmulgee, and people. I was on the first one, and they were taking pictures of it and things like that.
Oh.
What's that service designed to do?
It's really designed to get people into downtown Okmulgee area and like I guess a little freedom to they can go out and shop. Then then we got set times for those areas. We it's about 15-20 areas that we pick up, and every hour and a half we come back through the same area. So you go out, you get dropped off at Walmart, and you got, if you want to get back in an hour or hour and a half, that next trolley's coming around. We make several rounds throughout the day, all the way up until a little after 4. But yeah, we go through the elderlies and the colleges. For college. Another thing too is for the college kids. They can get into town and be able to get back to the college. Especially the ones that come from out of town. That stay in the dorms here. It's they can get on that trolley and come. Come anywhere. We got several stops downtown. We got one right in the center of Okmulgee, behind the National Council. Behind the National or Creek Council house. We got one there. It's a pretty much central spot, to get off and and do things here inside the downtown Okmulgee. We got the Walmarts.
Let me ask you this: do you have any signs that mark these stops? I noticed, like in Tulsa, bus stop is here. When I was in D.C., they were all over the place. But have you guys kind of looked into doing more of a kind of a marketing effort to let people know that this service is here and is really useful?
Yep, it is in progress.
Great.
As you can tell now, I don't know if you've seen some of our green shelters that are going up.
Right.
Yeah, those are in progress. They're not completely done, but yeah, it's gonna have it's got an advertisement board that's on those. It's supposed to be solar lighting in there and all that. So it's in the works.
Okay, great. I guess I was kind of selling an ad for Mvskoke News. Now, let's talk about hours of service. Now, the transportation, ride to work starts at what time?
There's some that start at 5. The Eufaula starts at 5. Mvskoke starts at 5:30. Then the Tulsa Hills one starts at 6.
Okay, that's you still be cranky when you wake up. I imagine, but hey, for the ride. And when did the service end at the end of the day?
Our drivers usually get back around 7:30. Yeah, but we usually get everybody dropped off. Just a little after 6:30. You're back to your vehicles and headed on to your destination from there. But that runs. Like if we got anybody coming back, like Tulsa Hills, they'll be at the bus stop up there about 5:45, 6 o'clock, and we'll bring them back into Okmulgee, then shut her down after that.
When I started to use your service, I wanted to get information on payments and prices and things like that, and your staff member I spoke with says, "Yeah, come on in. You can buy actually a pass or." A little card.
Bus pass.
Yeah, we had to mark it off again. So maybe we should talk about that kind of thing. What are those payments available? And I understand you'll even accept cash on the bus. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll accept cash on the bus. the bus passes, there's several different varieties of them. We got the ride to work passes, which we got the $15, the $30, and the $60. And like for the in town, inside city limit rides, we got the 50-cent passes, which is the $10 pass, and out of county rides, we got the $20 passes, which those are dollar boxes. And those ones, the in-town, the demand ride, those are 50-cent boxes. So
you could come in ahead and drop by your office and purchase them, and then that way it's in your wallet, and you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, don't have to worry about pulling cash out. And, because if like me, when I do ride, I don't like pulling out my wallet and opening it up to all them hundreds I got in there and paying.
Wait a minute, I'm in the wrong business here.
So, but yeah, it's as simple as that. You can, just pull out that card, keep it in your pocket, pull out that card, and go write that number down, mark it off, and you're on your way. Yeah,
that was one of the benefits that I really enjoyed. I mean, don't have to worry about it. I forgot to go to the bank or whatever, the ATM. Ta-da, there's your card.
Right.
Now, what kind of ridership are you currently seeing? On average, let's say a ride to work kind of thing.
Ride to work, we usually pick up about 850 riders a month on all three routes combined. As far as demand, we're averaging about 45 to 5,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so it keeps continually rising.
Yeah. Why do you think that's happening? People finding out, or word of mouth?
Yeah, I think it's just to this day people are just still finding out, and just word of mouth, and Facebook's became very popular around this era these days. So, but I know there's still a few people that hasn't heard of us yet. Yeah,
that kind of floored me when I heard that. I mean, my gosh, folks, these buses are everywhere. I mean, it's hard not to see one, plus the trolley and the big, long excursion buses and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds like a kind of almost a lucrative profession, too. I mean, your staff, I presume, are happy with their jobs and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we try to encourage everybody, especially that route that you ride on, Gary, the ride to work route.
Yeah.
$15, you can't beat that a week going to work, and you get on there, like if you're a late sleeper like me, you could sleep on the way down and stuff. But it's a real good system we got going.
Yeah, when I was riding that, I got to the point where I knew where all the bumps were.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're coming up to the first overpass south of Glenpool, and right there on the ramp is a big one, so get ready for it.
Yeah. Like we talked about earlier, some's heard of us but don't want to get stuck at work, for lunch. That's where our demand service comes in, and our scheduling. Demand rides, is just based of calling 732-7909. We answer it and tell us where you're at. We come get you, or you can, if you got time, to give us a call and set up a scheduled ride. I go to lunch at so and so. We'll get you scheduled in. Based on availability. Of course, but we'll get you scheduled in and get you to lunch, and then go back to work and. You sleep on the way back home when we take you home.
Sounds better than the cab. Now, the last couple of minutes here, we have some concern in the entire tribe right now about this coronavirus. Now, do you guys have you made any provisions for that, or any changes that the public should be aware of, or anything like that?
Not really, Gary. The only thing that I can see is we've already doing it. Because we Lysol our vans and our shuttle buses and stuff after every completion of every trip.
Right.
Because drivers change out throughout the whole day. You know, there could be 3 drivers on one bus and 3 drivers on this van. You know, each driver's trained to Lysol the whole, wipe down the floors and everything before the next driver even gets in it.
Right. So you know, you're doing your bit there.
Yeah. So, you know, like I said, that's an everything day for us. But other than that, there's nothing else more you can do.
Yeah,
you know?
and this situation is still forming, so we don't know what. I think our officials are doing what they can, from what I've seen, to deal with it in a sensible manner. One really important thing we need to put out there is this service is not just for Native people, not just for Indians, right?
No, sir. We are open to the public.
Which means anybody who's got
anybody that wants to go somewhere, give us a call. You know, we'll get you.
Okay, and if you're standing at the bus stop,
yeah, we'll pick you up and take you where you need to go. You know, as far as, you know, out of town rides, you know. If I can do it, I will. But usually, you know, out of town scheduled rides, you know, people that's got something scheduled, you know, we like to have 24-hour notice. The Tulsa medical rides, you know, at least 72-hour notice, you know, but you can't beat $14 going to a Tulsa doctor's appointment in the morning and getting back.
Yeah. So if you have a medication or something, you don't have to worry about driving and getting a little drowsy on the way home kind of thing. All right, now, Eric, if someone wanted more information or to take advantage of your service, how do they get in touch with you?
Our number, our dispatch line is 918-732-7909. But just to let me remind you, you know, that is a dispatch line, so it's ringing off the hook, so you may not get me the first try. But there also is a 918-549-2750. That's our other scheduler, and, you know, she kind of picks up what I can't catch, you know, because the phone just constantly rings over there.
Oh.
So
job security.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for making time to come in and talk with us. I will probably be seeing you and your drivers from time to time as my little pickup gets a little finicky sometimes.
Yeah.
So we'll talk with you again. And again, folks, you know, the service is open and available to our entire community. So if you see one and you need a ride, get a hold of them and they'll fix you right up. Okay, Eric, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll say bye for now, and we'll probably catch you again. All right, now we're going to be taking a short pause here on Mvskoke Radio here on the Brew, and we're going to talk with the Transportation Security Administration. We want to see about a couple of things that are important to Native people as far as getting on a plane, using other mass transportation. So stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Hear that? That's the sound of Hope being killed by meth. Methamphetamine use is causing huge problems in our community. Hear that? That's the sound of something you can do about it. Events like rodeo, res ball, and family time can help keep kids away from meth.
Talk to your kids. Keep our culture alive. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Learn more at ncai.org.
Who am I? Am I Native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Welcome back to Mvskoke Radio here on the Brew. We have on the line, I hope, Lori Dankers from the Transportation Security Administration. Are you with us, Ms. Dankers?
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Okay, I hope I got that title correct. Sometimes I get
You sure
a
did.
All right. Now, the reason we're talking is we've seen some interest and some discussion here, and even in Oklahoma, dear old Oklahoma, about real IDs and what's going on there, and people will be needing these to enter certain facilities, to get on an aircraft for travel, and other needs where there is some a security element involved. Now, let's start there with that one then. What's this all about? What's a real ID? And, of course, how do you get one?
Well, Real ID is something that I've been out talking about a lot, and here's why. On October 1st, 2020, the Department of Homeland Security has determined that anybody who is going to fly on a commercial aircraft will need a Real ID compliant state-issued license or another acceptable form of identification. That does include tribal IDs. So many people are prepared for Real ID, even though they don't know exactly what it is. But the good news is there are several forms of identification that will work starting October 1st, 2020, if somebody chooses to fly.
Right. Now, the important thing, I think, from the majority of our listeners is that a tribal ID will qualify. Now, I ran into this situation several years ago when I had inadvertently left my driver's license at home, and the agent asked if I had any other governmental type of ID, and I said, wait, yeah. And I whipped out my Mvskoke Creek Nation ID and membership, and they said, fine, that'll work. So is that the kind of the same situation there, or do people preferring to use a tribal ID need some other documentation or anything?
Yes, so tribal IDs are an acceptable form of identification at the security checkpoint today, as well as when Real ID enforcement starts on October 1st, 2020. But here's what the holders of tribal IDs need to know. First of all, the tribal ID must be from a federally recognized tribe by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Okay, the second one is your ID must have a photo. And if your ID has an expiration date, and not all of them do, it cannot have been expired for more than a year. And the last thing is, if there is no expiration date printed on that tribal ID, then there's no restriction beyond it just being from a federally recognized tribe as well as having a photo. So I would encourage people now not to wait to take a look at your tribal photo ID and make sure that there's a photo on there, that it's not expired for more than a year, if it has that expiration date, and that you're from a federally recognized tribe, which I don't think is problematic.
I actually ran into a minor little problem. I needed to, show this ID somewhere else, and someone looked at it and says, this is expired. And I looked at it, and it had been expired for over a year. And I thought, whoops, we better fix that. So I went back, to our citizenship people who took very good care of me, and I got a new ID real quick. So I think some of the question that pops into mind is, why does a tribal ID qualify, whereas perhaps the state of Oklahoma driver's license doesn't?
Well, that's a very good question, and that is because the tribal IDs are from a federally recognized entity. And Real ID, if you think about what's behind that, let me talk a little bit about the history of Real ID. So in 2005, Congress passed the Real ID Act, and in doing so, it established minimum security standards for state-issued driver's licenses or state-issued photo ID cards. The states had to adhere to a certain set of rules the federal government had established to ensure that when people got that credential, they were who they said they were. This is just no longer walk up there, give your name, and they hand you a driver's license. You have to provide proof in order to get that. Now, some states, including Oklahoma, have not started issuing those Real ID compliant licenses because it took them a while to get in compliance of what they were going to issue to their state residents. They had to undergo federal review. Now, 48 states and many territories are issuing Real ID compliant licenses, but if you live in a state where they're not issuing yet, you should look at the other types of federal or the other types of acceptable IDs, and many of those are federal in nature, just like the federally recognized tribes. That's why the tribal ID is acceptable. Now, if you don't have a tribal ID and you're looking to get a Real ID compliant credential or use another acceptable form of identification, let me give you some examples of what that would be. If you have a U.S. passport or a passport card, that would work. That's a federal document. A DHS Trusted Traveler Card, for example, if you're in global entry, which is an expedited clearance back into the country, you can use that as your ID. Also, if you have, for example, if you're a federal employee, you can use your federal ID. Other types of documents that work include things like merchant marine credentials. Now, I know many people in Oklahoma probably don't have those, but if they did, that would work as well. Why? Because that's a federal document. And in the same way, the tribal IDs qualify for that same reason.
And there aren't too many merchant marine facilities around.
That's right, but someone might have their merchant mariner card. You never know, and never underestimate.
Sure, that works just fine. Now, I think one point that this program has always tried to make is that there is a federally binding relationship between Indian tribal governments and the federal government, and it's not based on race or any other ethnicity or thing. So this is kind of a symbol of how the relationship works, then, would you say?
I would say absolutely it is. And we want people to know, if you have that tribal ID, you should use it in the security checkpoint. You need to take no additional steps. Now, I want to tell you that I have heard there have been incidents where a traveler has come with their tribal ID and they've been questioned about that. Now, that is not supposed to happen. That is not our standard operating procedure. But if it was to happen, here's what I want your listeners to know. The traveler should ask to speak immediately with the TSA supervisor who will respond to the officer who's provided the inaccurate information in the traveler, and they will resolve that, and you will be allowed to travel with your tribal ID as long as it has the required elements of the photo and hasn't been expired for more than a year if there is an expiration date. I don't want people to feel like they shouldn't use their tribal ID. It is an acceptable form of identification. We have that listed. It's in our standard operating procedures. And if you feel like that you aren't being given that information, you feel like you're being told it's not valid, ask to speak to that supervisor. I don't want to hear that happened. It's not common, but do know that you can use it, and you should use it.
There are a couple of things that come to mind when I hear that. Is one, there are some people who say, well, I don't want to create a problem or be make a scene here and this and that. Or completely on the other hand, there are those who might take umbrance to such things and say, you should be doing this, and why are you questioning me, blah, blah, blah. Are your people now sensitized or trained, perhaps, to deal with those kind of situations?
Yes, they have been trained, and we have done recurrent training on the use of tribal IDs. Now, keep in mind we have officers in more than 440 airports nationwide, so there may be someone who doesn't accept that, and because they're not aware with the procedure or they've overlooked something, and that's why I ask you to speak to a supervisor. You should use the ID that you have that's acceptable.
No, that's wonderful, and I hope it's kind of soothing to those folks who may have these questions.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, have you had any situation where the use of a tribal ID has come into question? I mean, kind of since we're in that area, so to speak.
Sure. So I have heard anecdotally that that's happened. I've not personally witnessed that. I've never had a traveler tell me that. But I have had supervisors say that they've responded to our travel document checker, and they have, in fact, looked at that tribal ID, determined that it was, in fact, as expected, valid, and the traveler is allowed to continue on their travels with that. Now, let me bring up one point, and that is if you have your travel ID, that is your tribal ID, and that is what you're planning to use, and someone tells you, for example, it's not acceptable, Well, you're stuck, right? Because you're not going to be able to go into the security checkpoint without your ID, without another laborious process. That is why I'm asking people to ask for a supervisor. It's a way to train our employees as well. If that was to happen, it would be rare, but it's never acceptable. And that's why I'm asking people just to say, just very gently, can I speak to the supervisor? They're required to get that supervisor for you, and it will be resolved. So please don't have any trepidation about that. Know that it is an acceptable form of identification, and we have those procedures in place for a reason. And by bringing the supervisor over, it'll be taken care of, and I guarantee you that will be a teachable moment for that officer who didn't know the procedure for whatever reason. Like I said, it will be rare, but that's on us, not on you.
Right, and as you say, don't be afraid to bring it up. I mean, you don't have to yell and get mad, but you can always save that for later.
And I want to bring up one more thing. You mentioned when you did not have an ID that there was another process. Now, that process is in place. It can take up to an hour to verify someone's identity based on their personal information, what we're able to determine and confirm about them. No one wants to go through that process. You're also subject to additional screening. Once again, no one wants to have to go through that if it can be avoided. Another incentive to ask for the supervisor, just so you know. And starting October 1st, 2020, when Real ID enforcement begins, we are not going to guarantee that process of that extra validation will be in place because we'll have a resource issue. We have over 2 million people a day traveling, and we just don't have the number of officers there to confirm that information, which is why people need to check today to make sure they're ready for Real ID enforcement. Now is the time.
A question that's not exactly related, perhaps. We've seen a lot of attention being paid to the COVID-19 coronavirus situation, and I was just wondering how your service and your agents now are reacting, and if you've seen any changes in the traveling population.
So that's a very good question. So we are following the Center for Disease Control and OSHA standards for our employees. For example, our standard operating procedures require our officers to wear gloves during the screening process. At any time, a passenger can ask that officer to change his or her gloves, so they have a fresh set of gloves on. We have a supply to support that. So that's one thing. Now, a lot of times, TSA officers will not even touch your belongings because they're going through a system through the X-ray tunnel. If there's no additional screening needed, you pick them up and go. But that's my next point. If you are traveling with items that are loose, your keys, your wallet, your phone, change, don't put those in a bin. Those are common use items that many people will be using, most of whom you do not know. Secure those in your own carry-on bag or in the pocket of your jacket if you're taking your jacket off. Think of ways to keep your belongings away from public areas. The bins are public, the checkpoints are public areas, and they should be treated as a public area because we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people coming through that checkpoint every single hour. So that's something to keep in mind. The other thing I want to say is people are allowed to travel with wipes and hand sanitizer if they'd like to do that for the duration of their flight. You can even bring one of those jumbo disinfecting wipes canisters with you through the security checkpoint. They're not a security threat. We're screening for security. And so you should feel free to do that to protect your own health. This is a case where people need to be very proactive, need to be very thoughtful about what they're doing, what they're coming in contact with to ensure that it's a low-risk environment. Now, there's some things that are beyond your control in terms of the environment that you're in, but you can bring items that can help mitigate that risk. And I would encourage people to do so. I have been flying. I've been traveling. I travel a lot for my job. And I can tell you, I'm just very proactive to ensure that I have a clean environment around me. I'm washing my hands regularly, even when I'm on the plane. I can't stress the importance of doing that. So, I think it's good we're talking about this because the more we can underscore the importance of caring for yourself, the better it is for you and those around you.
We're looking at spring and summer coming up, spring break, summer vacations. So there's going to be a very busy travel period, and this information makes a lot of sense for those periods, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you can never talk about it enough, especially when we go into spring break, summer, holiday travel. That's when infrequent travelers come to the checkpoint. And that's why I'm sure I'm always talking about it. Even if I think people have heard it before, it doesn't matter. We could all use that reminder.
Right. Let me see. What have I got on my... Okay. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was a situation that happened at the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport a month or two ago. A Native activist woman, Tara Hauske, Tara Hauske, brother, was encountered an agent who, well, I don't know quite how to put it delicately, but the agent got a hold of her hair, which was in long traditional braids, pulled it behind her back, and kind of laughingly said, "Giddy up." And that had a potential for really making people angry, but I understand that Ms. Hauske did get upset, but it worked out the situation. According to what I've been able to research here, the description Ms. Hauske gave was pretty accurate, and TSA agreed. What happened there? I mean, geez, why would someone do something like that, first of all?
That's a great question. We don't know why the TSA officer did that. I can tell you that when we were made aware of these allegations by the traveler about what occurred to her at Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, we investigated the incident, and we learned that, in fact, it had happened. And so our federal security director for that airport, which is our senior official there for TSA, immediately reached out to the traveler and wanted to speak to her. He apologized to her immediately for the actions of the TSA officer, and he was aware that what had occurred was extremely insensitive, and he wanted her to know that this is not how we would normally do business. He knows that that was not something that we want to see any of our officers doing. But interestingly enough, Ms. Hauske said, "I don't want the officer to get in trouble. I don't want anybody to be fired. I want them to learn about the importance of Native Americans, the relevance and the meaning of my braids. I want people to understand that we have a culture that we value." And so that was an opportunity for us to not only talk to that officer about this, but other officers as well. And the way Ms. Hauske came out of that to allow us to work with our workforce, we were extremely appreciative. She actually responded back to us that we had been very respectful to her, and we recognized why that was offensive to her. And she said that she essentially told our federal security director that it was all good. She's glad we responded like we did. She's glad we used it as a teachable moment. And she'd never had this happen to her before at Minneapolis-St. Paul or at any other airport, and that's why she felt it was important to bring it up. I can tell you that the officer who did this was extremely remorseful immediately after it occurred, and in fact had mentioned it to a coworker, and said, I'm embarrassed for what I did, but they did not self-report it. So our federal security director needed to then determine what those next steps were, and he looked to Ms. Hauske, and he followed her direction because he was grateful for the way she approached that. And I'm glad she said something. If she hadn't said something and she had let that simmer inside of her, that would have been a regret for us. But instead, we were able to deal with it. We were very open. We owned it immediately, and I can tell you, across the country, our officers took note. And for that, we apologize that it occurred, but we're glad we're able to make good of it.
Now, after becoming aware of that particular incident, I was, word horrified, incensed, inflamed, all kinds of the very strong negative emotions came to mind, and so I have to admire Ms. Hauske for the way she handled it. Had that happened to me when I was younger, and I did wear my hair in long braids, I would have been furious. I would have demanded somebody's head, so to speak, and tried to make a big nasty thing out of it. Now, that had a potential for a PR disaster, I think, but you've managed to avoid it by her, Ms. Hauska, and plus your own people coming forward like that.
Well, I would say this. I think Ms. Hauska set an example for all of us. She realizes that she could have been very upset, and I'm sure she was upset. But she also realized that she's in a position. She's a great advocate for issues that she cares about. She was in a position to make change, and that helped us. And for that, we're grateful to her. I think that we did not provide any details of this incident until we cleared them with her first. And the reason is we didn't want her to be further embarrassed or to provide anything that would cause her to feel shamed. She didn't do anything. So we worked really closely with her during this entire process to be respectful to her. And she is an extraordinary woman, and we were very fortunate that we got to work with her and know her, and we're grateful to her.
You mentioned you had shared this information with the rest of the TSA personnel. Have you had any feedback from them? Were they surprised or shocked? Or
They were shocked. They were shocked and they were embarrassed at MSP because they're used to seeing Native Americans come through the security checkpoint. They're well aware of what they're supposed to do when they're screening them, their belongings, all of that. And they were not happy with it. But they also know that people make mistakes and they can learn from them. So it was a discussion within the agency across all the states, all of our airports. They were all aware of this. They were aware of how we owned it. But they're also aware that they are held to high standards of personal conduct as well as professional conduct. And this didn't meet that mark. And I can guarantee you that spoke to many officers. They're aware. They know.
That's amazing. That's so gratifying to hear. Through all this thing, I looked at the way Ms. Hauska handled it from her position there, and it reminded me of an old line from an old movie, old black and white movie about foreign legionnaires or something like that. It was Gunga Din, and right at near the end of it, he said, "You're a better man than I, Gunga Din," and that's exactly the way I felt because I knew I would not have handled it that well. All right, now let me move on to one more subject here that's sort of related. Now, we mentioned the Minneapolis, St. Paul, like Denver, Oklahoma City, Seattle, I presume San Francisco. These are all areas that do see high percentages of Native American passengers going through them. One incident that came to my attention was that, and I forget where and when and who, but was a question of religious items. Yes. I believe a man was carrying a tobacco pouch and eagle feather and had to submit it to security for screening, which is understandable. But I believe he asked that the agents not touch them because they were spiritually sacred, and to do so may contaminate them spiritually. Wow. I mean, geez, how do you handle a situation like that? And do you recall any policy trainings or information being put out to your staff?
Yes. So that was a case of the Western District of Texas out of San Antonio, and there was a case that was litigated there. Now, there was a timeline that was set in the settlement agreement in the case, and TSA agreed to abide by that timeline. Now, what ended up happening is our employees had to review a job aid that was mentioned in the settlement, and it talks about our managers and our passenger support specialists, which are people who are specially trained to handle special circumstances, whether it's medical or other special circumstances. They were required to review the job aid. I don't know how many employees that was, but I do know that review was completed. And so what happened there in this particular case is that the overlying message was that we respect the rights of all passengers during the screening process, but those who bring religious or cultural or ceremonial items that require special handling, our officers were also told that those travelers should bring to the officer's attention that they're traveling with those items. So it's very helpful if when someone comes to the checkpoint with something of significance, tell our officers proactively. Because if it requires a special type of screening, if it requires special action on our part, we can't do that unless we know it's there. Okay, so if you're traveling with something of religious significance and you don't want it to go through the x-ray, for example, our officer will tell you what your options are so you could make a decision on how it will be screened. Something that people need to know is that every item does need to be screened. Items are not exempted. They can just be screened through alternate methods.
What would those methods be?
Well, let's say you didn't want it to go through the x-ray machine. Let's say you said, I don't want this to be with other personal property of other travelers. That item may need to be swabbed for explosives. So then as a traveler, you can decide, do I want my item to be swabbed or would I prefer to put it through the x-ray tunnel? If you're bringing something that's liquid, over the 3.4 ounce rule, that is going to need to be screened in a special way, and you need to bring a quantity that's only good for the duration of the flight. We can't have people bringing gallons upon gallons of items. I don't think that your audience would do that. But if it's going to need to be screened in a certain way because of the size, the amount of the liquid, then that's information you'll have so you can make a decision of how you want to proceed. I feel like people are at their best when they know what to expect and they have options. And that's what our officers will do. But they can only give you the option if we know that you have that. Now, anybody can contact our TSA Cares helpline. You can do a quick web search on TSA Cares. There's a lot of information on our website. And you can request in advance assistance when you get to the airport with your special items. One, we're going to know it's coming to the checkpoint, and two, we'll have somebody there ready to meet you. And that is going to take away a lot of the trepidation and uncertainty of the process. So that's something to think about. The other thing is we recommend that you pack delicate items in such a way that they're easily accessible but still protected. We don't want you as a traveler to have to unpack your whole bag to find the item that may need that special screening. So keep that in mind to make it easy for you as well as for our officers. And that's the kind of tips they'll give you if you notify us in advance. It's whatever works best for the traveler, we're set to accommodate.
Let me throw a hypothetical situation out there that maybe you can shed some light on. Perhaps a native spiritual leader was carrying a couple of things that he did not want to put in his luggage and have it checked. That might be an eagle claw wand, which retained the talons, or perhaps a ceremonial pipe that was shaped like a tomahawk with a pipe on the end. And had not made the contacts prior to the trip. So how would your agents deal with that? And person saying, well, these are sacred. I don't want you to touch them. I'll show them to you or whatever. I don't want anything else happening to them. How would your agents deal with that?
So that's a great question. So that's something people need to know is that items that are replicas of weapons, whether it's a realistic replica firearm, realistic replica knife, those items are not allowed through the checkpoint onto the cabin of the aircraft. Something that is a replica tomahawk or looks like a tomahawk, definitely call in advance. And we will work with you to ensure you can travel with it. It may or may not be allowed in your carry-on luggage. That's not a determination I can make. But with a little planning, you'll get information up front. You'll know exactly what to expect. That item may need to be placed in checked baggage. I don't know because that's not a determination that I make. But what I do know is people need to plan ahead to say what they're traveling with, provide pictures, you can provide descriptions, and they'll make a call on it. The last thing we want is for you to come to the checkpoint, be told you can't travel with something, and not have a backup plan. So I know there's a variety of items people travel with. I get that. And we want to be supportive of you and allow you to be able to do that. But we also have certain procedures that we have to follow. And one of those is replicas of weapons are not allowed. So rather than trying to come to an agreement at the checkpoint, let's start working on that in advance and go through our TSA Cares program.
That makes all the sense in the world. Here's something that just popped into my mind, which is
Sure.
Liable to happen a lot. Are there Native American staff members? Do you have any resource people there that you might work with?
Yeah, so they do. We have an office of traveler engagement and civil rights that works on these types of things. They're frequently engaged. They're not our uniformed officers, but they work very closely with our uniformed officers on our procedures and carrying out the screening duties. They're a resource for our uniformed officers to be able to go to them and say, here's what we're faced with. How should we handle? And our Office of Traveler Engagement is very involved in that. For example, we were talking about Mvskoke recently. We discussed with them that situation, and they gave us some sage advice. We knew it didn't follow our procedures and policies, but we wanted to know what else we could do, and they weigh in. Same is true about those items. But we do need to have advance notice. It's not something that we can do quickly. Think of the environment and the checkpoint and our officers and the pace that they're moving. Frequently, there's a lot of people coming through, especially if it's a peak travel time. So that's why planning ahead is key. And if you travel with that item regularly and you know how you have been able to travel with it before, be sure to provide that as well, because we want to know what you've done previously and how it worked out for you so that we can make sure we're prepared to accommodate that in the future.
Thank you so much. I was a bit amused by your use of the term sage advice. One of our sacred herbs. Now, if someone had any questions for TSA or a situation that they wanted to work on, how would they get in touch with you?
So there's a couple of ways on our website, tsa.gov. There's a way that you can send an email. You can get contact information. We hear from the traveling public, as you can imagine, all the time. That's one way. Another way you can do it is through direct message on Twitter or Messenger on Facebook. The name of the account is Ask TSA. You can send a question, you can send a comment, and then they will see that. We have people who staff our social media accounts, and they will respond to you by sending a direct message. Then that's not public, so you can include information. If you're requesting information, that type of thing, they'll help you, and they'll put you in touch with the right people or send you, refer you to the correct place to go. So that's probably the best thing. The worst thing to probably do is just show up at the airport and just tell one of our officers you got a comment about this or that, because they are focused on their screening duties. But it's better to have a more planned approach, which is to reach out to us through our official channel or through our social media. Also, if you are traveling and you go on the far side of the checkpoint, there's an area where you can pick up a comment card. Every card is read.
Okay.
Not every card requires a response, but every card is read.
Ms. Dankers, thank you so much for being helpful in supplying all this information. We wish you well in your mission and trying to keep us safe. And thank you for sharing this and taking all my silly questions there.
Oh, they're not. Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me, and I hope that we'll keep in touch, and feel free to reach out to me if you hear get any feedback. I'd like to respond as needed.
Okay, well, thank you. But all right, now we got about a minute or so left. I'm going to fire through some wild onion dinners, and my guess is you might want to get a hold of them ahead of time in case they might have canceled because of concerns over coronavirus. 14th and Saturday, Angie Smith, UMC, and whoa, that's cut off. In Oklahoma. March 11th, Saturday, 5 UMC, 1100 Eufaula in Mvskoke. 14th, Eufaula Indian Community Center, of course, in Eufaula, and also the same day, Slapslako. Between Okeem and Wetumpka. Pocahontas Club, First UMC in Claremore. Oh, let's see if we can get a couple more in here on the 14th to Wally UMC in Broken Bow, Mary Lee Clark in Dell City on the 21st, Tulsa, my favorite Indian UMC in Tulsa, of course, also on the 21st, Van Lake Baptist Church in Porter. All right, I got to go. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you being with us. You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Madam.